Hello everyone, Derrick Floyd here, IK Multimedia. Welcome to IMSTA FESTA Online 2020. Hope you enjoyed that sneak peek from our internationally known DJ and producer, special guest, Andy Moor. We're going to get cranking into his segment in just a moment, but I want to make sure that you guys have checked out some of the other segments at the IK booth. We've got two going on right now. One of them is with our incredible new product, Mixbox, with an engineer from a company called Raytown Productions. His name is Bobby Balo. Don't forget to check that out. And the other segment is a sneak peek into the huge upgrade of our flagship product, Amplitude 5, with guitar slinger, instrumental hero, Neil Zaza taking it down for us. You don't want to miss that. But let's dive into the segment that we're talking about here, which is how software technology has changed how we create and produce music these days. And if you stay to the end of this segment, we actually have a small video concert of some of Andy's best work, so stay tuned to the very end to check out and rock out with us at IMSTA FESTA 2020. Without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce our special guest. We've already said, internationally known DJ and producer, Mr. Andy Moor. Andy, you there, buddy?
Hey, I'm here. How are you?
Hey, how are you there, buddy? What's going on out there?
I'm really, really good. Thanks for asking. Yes.
Man, trying to stay away from this COVID and all this craziness out here. What about you guys up there?
Same. We're just about to get locked down again, so investing in some new toys. And, as you do.
And I can't imagine with you guys, if as a DJ, you're used to seeing crowds, you know? I guess you can't see any crowds right now, no?
No, I can just see you, but that's good enough for me.
You can get a crowd of about 100, all spaced out, you know, socially distanced with masks. That's what you got.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
So, man, let's go ahead and jump into the interview and what we're talking about today, which is technology and software and how that's changed how we create music now. It really has taken over what we've done and how we've changed music in where we are now. So you've been in the EDM industry, gosh, for over 20 years now, you know, working with everyone from Armin van Buuren to Tiesto, to Paul Oakenfold, you name it, and you've been out there. When did your real love for music kind of begin with you?
Would have been from a very young age, basically, from listening to film scores, sci-fi scores, just basically when I was when I heard the first synths, I used to hear the first synth sounds, and that got me heavily interested in music, and just from a young age I just wanted to pursue it. And then when I was at primary school, you got the opportunity to learn instruments, and I just pursued it as much as possible.
Wow. And most people know you as an incredible DJ and a producer, but you just mentioned you learned instruments, and I hear you learned like 6 instruments when you were very younger, so you play multiple things now?
Yeah, I used to play various instruments when I was at school, and then obviously it wasn't so cool to be playing the bassoon when I was 16 years old. It got left in the wayside. But obviously things like the piano still helps, and music theory is still useful.
Which ones did you play? I know you said bassoon, piano. Did you play guitar, bass? What else did you learn?
Guitar, drums, recorder even, and yeah, picked up a few. But yeah, like I say, it was useful to get my interest and pique my interest, but it almost turned me away from it as well. When I was carrying a big briefcase around school, getting laughed at by my friends. So.
Well, which one did you love the most? Obviously,
piano.
And how old were you when you got your first synthesizer? Like, did that blow your mind? How did that change the trajectory of your playing it when you had a real synthesizer? How'd that go?
Well, my first synth wasn't really a synth; it was a workstation. It's like one of those Yamaha all-in-one with 16 presets and a little sequencer. So, and yeah, I would just be upstairs in my room all of my spare time, messing around with it, just trying to figure out how to compose and how to record music, basically.
And you sitting up there, that had to change the trajectory of your whole life, because now, you know, you're writing, producing music. Were you always focused on, I'm going to be an artist? How did that come about in your mind?
No, not really. I wanted to be lots of different things, and you just put your mind to various things. I mean, I enjoyed football, various other things. I think every kid in the UK thought they were going to be a footballer, which doesn't happen. But obviously having the keyboard there and just having you have to dedicate yourself to try to figure things out, and equally not having the answers to the questions that I wanted at the time, that also had a big impact on the trajectory. So yeah, there's a multitude of
What?
factors which those first keyboards brought to the fore.
So in the beginning, it was tons of keyboards to produce the sound that you were trying to get to. When did technology kind of make its way into how you think and how you started to create?
Well, it depends how you define technology, because I think my first sequencer was recording onto one cassette tape, playing it back, and then recording something else on my friend's cassette tape. So if that's classed as technology, then I think that was my first foray into sequencing. But yeah, I think I moved on to the next keyboard I had after the first 3 or 4, which I had one every year for Christmas. The next upgrade was one which had like a built-in sampler, and that was, I think it had like a 3-second sample time, and
Ooh,
it was so,
you were big
so
time then.
yeah, big time. Yeah, it was so amateur, but it makes you think creatively, and it gives you that first. It gives you an easy way to understand the basic principles of what I know now.
Wow, wow. When did software enter the picture for you?
Software would have been, I first saw my first tracker when my uncle showed me his Amiga. So I didn't really get a chance to fully play with it then, but that was my first view of that. And then my first proper time, it would have been, I think I had a sound card with a built-in sequencer on a PC, and I think I needed something like 2 meg of RAM, and I was begging my dad to upgrade the PC so I could install it.
And 2 megs of RAM was like huge back then. It was like $200.
I think it was Christmas present that year, so yeah.
And did you have one of those Creative Lab Sound Blaster cards? We thought we were the bomb when we had those.
Oh, they were so cool. Sound Blaster with an exclamation mark at the end. Oh, I never got one of those. No, I actually got a Yamaha SW1000 XG or something. It was the first amateur, but I could make very close to what I wanted to make at that time. It had its own DSP chip so it could bypass the lack of power of my parents' PC. So,
wow.
Good times.
When did you experience like your first DAW, like Pro Tools or Logic or anything like that? When did that snap into your world?
That was when I went to work in a recording studio locally. Just gave up my time, as just went to help out. So that was my first real chance to get to see how it was really done. So that was when I was in school.
So you went from hanging out at home and begging your dad for RAM for your PC to working at home on your computers and your keyboards, and then you forayed into a studio. How did that connect? When did that happen?
I just wrote letters to. Back then, there's no real way. I think it was the time I didn't have the internet, and I went to the library to try to understand how to learn myself, with no money. So it was pretty much impossible back then. So I just wrote letters to studios, and one guy said, "Yeah, just come down." So I showed willing. He took me on, unpaid, but he let me sit in and help, and that gave me a good insight into the next steps, basically.
Wow. So you went the grassroots way, man. You just went in there and said, "Let me sit behind and watch what's happening." Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. What about you?
Man. Well, I was the nerdy kid. Like you said, I was reading the books, and the software was always around, so to speak, because I had a lot of family members that were into music, so I was kind of exposed to it from them. And I think my first program was probably Pro Tools, like the early version of Pro Tools. And then I had a piano program. I forget what it was called, but I thought it was the most amazing thing that I could make my computer sound like a piano. I was just floored by that. Like, wow, I was floored by that. Yeah. What was your first software synthesizer? What was your first one? Your first software synthesizer program?
Soft synth.
Yeah.
Ooh, what would that have been? That's a good question. It would have been one of the synths on the sound card. It would have been
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of started on software, went to hardware. Now I'm fully back to software again. So that sound card that I bought had everything. So it would have been one of the built-in software synths within that. And please don't ask me what it would have been called, because I don't remember. It obviously wasn't that good.
Yeah, we're all too old. We don't remember. It's okay. It's okay. So, now that you've fast forward in, you've become a producer or a DJ, creating your own sound, so to speak, and that sound's been well known and sought after. How has software played a part in you creating your own sound as a DJ and as a producer?
In the early days, it would have been related to the fact that probably, again, going back to that first sound card where I came from using software, and then to become professional productions, I had to learn all the hardware. So I went through a phase then of slowly building up my hardware I had Cubase back in the day. So then I'd use that purely to sequence. Well, the guys I was engineering for used it purely to sequence, whereas I was using that to do everything. So I think having that early days with just the software, as amateur as it was, gave me the opportunity to incorporate some creative techniques using the software alongside the hardware, alongside the sampling, the MIDI control, the synths, etc. So I would say that was probably the first time.
Well, that's a great segue into the next question, because you learned the hardware first, then you went backwards and tried to create software or have software that did what the hardware was doing. So you went back and forth. Nowadays, all the hardware synths, or a lot of the hardware synths, have been recreated or reimagined in a software version. How has that changed your workflow and how you produce?
Well, it's huge. It's just there's a multitude of benefits. Just instant recall is huge. Arguably the biggest advantage. To a lot of people, it will be the cost aspect as well. That's going to be huge. Not having to be surrounded by equipment that's giving off so much heat. I mean, I could talk about it. There's so many reasons, but it's more creative as well. That's arguable actually. That's debatable. But yeah, there's a multitude of benefits to just using software these days.
Well, give me a couple more. I think people sometimes they think, okay, I gotta have this analog piece of gear, but I try to explain to people there's so much more creativity and workflow in having a software version of it that I can really be able to manipulate, maybe like save presets and be able to save what I'm doing in my work. I can add effects to what I'm doing. I can really stretch out my creative ideas as far as shaping the sound itself and get to things faster. There's just so much that I can do with software, no?
Oh, totally, yeah, exactly. As you say, just being able to recall what you were doing, but being able to route things so virtually, and there's just so much. Because the hardware, there's some argument to be had for having a physical piece of hardware, but being able to have so many instances of the same piece of hardware, for example, whether it's layering compressors upon the same compressor and with tiny dialing in, it's so advantageous.
And here's the big question, and everybody's always fighting about this one, but is or does software sound as good as the real thing? So if I got a Moog Voyager and I got Moog Voyager and software over here, do they sound the same inside the headset?
I think they're so close. We've done some tests, some buddies and I, and they sometimes they sound better. So it all depends. It depends on how you're recording, what analog to digital chips you're using, etc. There's so many, but I don't think in the bigger picture it doesn't. There's no difference to me personally. There you go. I would take the benefits over the hardly interpretable audio differences.
Wow. Are there particular software products now that are essential to your workflow? They're essential to how you create your sound. Give me a couple of those that are essential in your world.
Since I've been using the Mixbox, for example, from you guys, that's definitely essential now. Just being able to create, to have so many different instances of various different plugins all within one box. That's become my first go. I mean, also some of the presets on that thing are pretty cool. Seriously cool. So that's something. Since I've had that, I won't be without that anymore. Obviously, it's from something as simple as just having a sequencer. That's obviously something which will always be very important. I always used to use things like Ohmforce, these crazy Ohmvoice plugins. They used to. I think it was one of the first delays, which would have a filter just after the delay and attached to LFOs, and that was all the first all-in-one box for that. And I used to create my own chain to do this effect. So that was one of the first plugins which made me think, actually, people are creating plugins which have a multitude of effects line in sequence within one box. And that was pretty eye-opening to me then. So you could attach various different parameters to one knob and then create some wild and wacky creative effects.
That's cool.
There's something called Camel Fat Space, which I used to like. Not Camel Fat. Yeah, it was. I think they've gone out of business now. I'm not sure. But, yeah, that was pretty useful, and I've still got that now, luckily. But again, these days there's so many. These guys. Yeah, there's a lot of plugins coming out, which are becoming staples for me.
What about your DAW of choice? Are you a Cubase guy, Logic guy, Pro Tools guy? What do you think? Ableton now?
Yeah, I went from Cubase to Pro Tools to Logic with Pro Tools. Now I'm on Logic. I wish I was on Studio One or Ableton, just because the workflow is so much quicker, but I'm so invested in Logic that I'm still here. But
you know, I've heard that a couple of times too.
Yeah, exactly. There's an argument to be had for everyone.
Sure.
But I think, yes, Logic and Cubase are good for me. Just they fit more with my musical background. But I think for the kind of music I make, kind of wish I was on Ableton.
Now, I hear a ton about Ableton, especially anybody doing dance music or something like that. They just say it just works. It thinks like that person, has a workflow that just kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
I've played with it a little, and I've got some buddies that have been trying to teach it to me, but I'm so logic minded. Like my brain just goes and thinks like that. So it would take me a while to undo my creative process to start another DAW. You know what I mean?
That's it. That's it. So you're on Logic?
Yeah, I'm Logic all the way. I have been for years. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
I started on Pro Tools, and I love Pro Tools as a mixing surface. I just don't like it as a creative space. Does that make sense?
Agree. Totally agree. And I've worked with some guys that use Ableton, and they've got everything set up. And they just throw things in there, and it's just the track's finished straight away. And I'm kind of in awe in how they've got it set up. But to me, that's kind of cheating as well. That you kind of narrow, you get much down this one line. And for me, I like having everything open, which Logic gives you. So
you're kind of cheating, huh?
But it's sending you down the same line every time you produce music, because it's pre-formatted to make you think a certain way.
Well, here's the question then. We were talking about essential plugins. So you get started on a track. You have an idea. What's the first soft synth that you pull up? What's the first one you go to start your creative process?
At the moment, it's going to be Diva.
Okay.
But again, it's a good question, because some people are so invested in one plugin, which would have been me back in the day. And then they go straight to that same place. Whereas today there's just so much variety, and I find it quite inspiring to actually try something new and go somewhere which I've not been before, because it might spark something different. I think it's good to stay on your toes with regards to remembering where things are within each synth.
Sure.
Because otherwise you get too stuck in your ways.
Yeah. I think a lot of my friends I talk to now, either they get into creative overload where they have too many synths, so they can't they can't pick something, but then they throw something up, and it's about like picking through the presets, trying to get a little inspiration. How do you get the inspiration for your music that you do now? Where does it come from?
The latter thing that you just said would be one, because I think if I flick through preset, if I know exactly what I want, then I'll make it. But if I don't know what I'm doing, or if my mind's elsewhere, I'll just flick through things, and then if I find something that sounds good, I will then find a use for it, which is what my brain, I think that comes from what we spoke about earlier, which was having to work with what you've got. So if I find something that I like, I'll make it work somewhere, somehow.
And like you said, there's just so many options out there now. I use Falcon quite a bit. I use, of course, our product, Sample Tank, which is enormous for lots of different sounds and categories. So use that quite a bit for that. I use some Native Instrument stuff, Machine and stuff like that. So, I mean, there's just so many toys. For me, I think they all serve a different niche in the creative process. Like not one piece does it all. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. I like the Arturia stuff as well. I mean, some people say negative things about those, but personally, I like those. Yeah, there's just so many options these days. The Spectrasonic stuff was very good for inspiration because there's some cool sounds built into that. So that was one of the first kind of programs that brought those kind of sounds to my table, at least.
Oh yeah, Omnisphere was amazing when it first came out, dude. That was just the box. You're like, oh my god, it just does so many things. We were just in awe, right?
It's still amazing to this day. I think it's so many uses for it. Just even if it's just to whack something in that you're going to replace at a later date with the sound you really want. It just gives you that basis for what you need.
So here's one for you. Recording in the box. We hear that term all the time now. And some people would say that's negative, but you know, for people that are just starting out, is this opening the door for others to kind of create, or do you feel like they should go start the studio route like we did and kind of grind it out? Where do you think they should start? Good
question. I think about this a lot because I'm quite interested in the whole educational aspect as well, just from my own frustrations as a kid. Now, on one hand, if it's too easy, how are they ever going to really, they're never going to be fully aware of what their own potential is, because they're just going to be doing what they've learned. Whereas on the other hand, there needs to be a way for them to learn. So it's a good question. What about you? What do you think?
Well, what is the question really digs in? What is recording in the box? Because people throw that term around. What does that term mean to you? And what does that mean for people out there? Because I mean, I feel like it gets a negative connotation sometimes, like, oh, you guys just recorded in the box. But yet you can do a lot of cool stuff in the box that you couldn't do before, you know? And I think, like you said, if it's a new person coming in to open the door trying to learn how to do music, recording in the box, I sometimes feel like he should go backwards first and grind out a little bit, learn about music theory, learn about how the songs are constructed, learn about what tools you need to make the music in the box sound better. Because you don't, you'll be crippled by only what the box can give you. Make sense?
It makes total sense, but the box can give you everything anyway. The box can give you every single thing you need. So the people that say that's just the easy option for them, because they're invested in hardware. Because there's no real reason why the box gives you everything you need. It's up to you then to get what you need out of it, and that requires passion.
That's a good answer.
And it requires dedication. And if you take the easy option inside the box, you'll probably not end up reaching your full capacity. If you search for the things you do need to progress and develop within the box, then you've got every single tool you need.
Well spoken. Well spoken. So speaking of the box then, you have been working with some IK products as of late. You've received Miroslav Philharmonic, which of course is orchestral sounds put together by Miroslav Vituis, which of course is amazing sounds. They have this passion and warmth to them. How did sampling change the game as far as when you could take and sample something like that and be able to capture that? How does that help you in your creative process?
Well, it probably saves me £2,000 every time I need an orchestra. But no, that's everything I used to dream of when I was younger, just to be able to have samples of that quality at your fingertips, which are you can fully articulate with just by not taking your fingers off the keyboard. That's just it's everything I dreamed of. It's what I used to actually manually create myself with automation and samplers, just assigning the attack to the mod wheel, for example, but now you've done it all within one box, within one program, and the quality of the samples is spectacular, and it is genuinely a game changer for me when it comes to strings. I just need to stop throwing strings into every single track now.
So we've inspired you. There we go. Nice.
It's water, by the way, and it's still only 5 p.m.
Yeah, it's. I think the neatest thing about Miroslav, and I use it all the time, like you said, it's just the articulations and being able to add emotion just by holding the keyboard down or holding it and having those dynamics in the sample itself. Nothing had really done that before that way, so to be able to really live through the strings on a keyboard's pretty killer when you're able to put that emotion into a track, don't you think?
It's awesome. There's a couple of products which tried to do this before, which I purchased, but this one, it's the full Monty, and it really has since I've been using it, it's been so useful for what I've been trying to achieve.
Now, you also have the opportunity to work with Mixbox. You mentioned that earlier in the conversation, which, of course, is our brand new analog effects rack, which really, I've said it 100 times, but it really is a game changer. By the way this thing is set up, and you can be able to put 8 effects in a virtual rack, and you can align them or assign them however you want, in whichever route you want. You can reroute them and have a mixer of those 8 channels, and you can put it on one channel, and it mixes 70 effects from our flagship products, from Sample Tank, Amplitude, and T-Rex. I mean, what has that done for your workflow now?
Well, it's as you've just said, it's a game changer for my workflow. As you've just said, I can just simply move things around within the chain. The quality of the effects is deceiving when you see the lack of knobs on each product. But I love how you've done that as well, so it doesn't visually overwhelm you, which can easily happen when it comes to so many different powerful plugins. So there's so many different ways in which it's helped so far, and it makes me excited for one to get back to it, because yeah, like you just said, I can line eight up in one go, and it also makes me think outside the box, inside the box, because it makes me want to use all 8 different as well. So I think, well, why not throw another little inverse reverb on there as well as this one? Whereas before, I might be a little bit lazy and just use whatever Logic's got available that are set up within a buzz. So that's one of many ways it's changed.
I think a lot of people that I've been talking to about it have said that one of the things they love most is being able to, like you said, think outside the box, and what they would not normally do, like put something through distortion that would normally have distortion because you have amps in that chain, or you can put something with compression that would normally have it, and mix it all up and see what happens with it. It's such an incredible space.
That's definitely it, yes. I've been throwing far too much distortion. That's saturation plugins. Obviously, the very first plugin I ever bought was the T-Rex. So you've been in the game a while, so you've got that saturation down to a T, and yeah, as I said before, just being able to switch things around and put things in an order which you might not logically make sense, or you might, for example, see some of the presets and find things in an order which you would never normally use, and then that will inspire you to try that again. I used to have channel strips set up within Logic for these things, but that was so limited with regards to, you can't put some channel strips on the synth, on the MIDI, on the certain audio channels. You can't put them on channel strips, for example, on buzzes. So this you can actually put on top of anything straight away and save your favorites and add it as one plugin, and it just keeps everything sweet, simple, easy, powerful.
And I always like to remind people that a ton of that gear is models of analog gear that you would have to have: a Black 76, a White 2A, the Neve models, you know, all the amplifiers from Fender, you know, stuff that you would have in a studio. You could put this in your rack in 500 series style. How cool is it to be able to pull out those actual hardware pieces and switch them all up, but you couldn't route them together that way in real life. You know what I mean? No,
exactly. And sometimes you have to just remind yourself that how powerful it is as well, and take a step back and just pick your jaw up off the floor and remind yourself that this is actually as close as the original gear as you're going to get. And don't be deceived by, sometimes it's easy to be deceived, as I said before, by the lack of controls on some of them, which is actually more powerful for me, because it keeps you creative as well. And
so that adds us to the next question. That keeps us to, you know, do you find, because now this big thing about modeling has become the next thing. So IK has been known for modeling, as we've modeled multiple pieces of gear, and of course our Amplitude products are all branded from some of the best amp manufacturers out there: Fender, Orange, Gavin Kruger, THD. You know, all these people have known because we get the modeling thing right. What do you think is have we gotten it pretty close where the actual analog piece sounds like that piece? Are we at that space where it's good? That's great. What do you think?
well, I'm not just saying that because you're here, but I was saying it to myself when I was messing around with it the first time and the last time, that it definitely is. Personally, I don't understand how you can get it so close, because it doesn't make sense to me. But it's definitely it's everything you could wish for, and the power. And I'm expecting a question to come, such as, where can you take it from here? And I really do not know, because when I used to buy, from the very beginning of being a fan of adding extra power with DSP chips, which is what my first sound card was. So to combine all of this together, so then I was a big fan of the UA products, the Universal Audio products, which gave me that extra power, just because I didn't always have the money for the high spec computer as well. Whereas now you've got this all together without any need for any of that. And just having that box interface, as you say, being able to use it all as one plugin, it's crazy.
And with technology growing every day, you have access to the latest technology because of what you do, because you've been out there. You're an amazing producer, DJ. So the companies come to you and say, hey, this is all great stuff. You can grab anything you want. Now that you've seen it all, what do you think is left for companies to do? We've modeled everything. We're creating all these new ways to put things together. What would you like to see a company like IK create?
Good question. As I just said, it's difficult to know where to go and what else there is to achieve. The big picture is ultimately companies have to sustain themselves and stay in business, and then that as a priority. The second priority is give the consumers something which they either need, want, or didn't know they need or want. So I presume you're gonna have to either up the game in terms of making things easier, more powerful, streamline it, and entice creativity somehow. I mean, one way would be through the education means, which it would be to find a package maybe which gets the very beginner and takes them through almost a course, but gives them the tools, and at a reasonable price to begin with. And you can bolt on the next stage maybe. That's something I always thought about, where you would start with basic music theory before moving on to understanding basic MIDI, and then it's all explained correctly, which would actually bring put that into a package which is priced correctly, and so you could actually bring the creativity to the whole world at the right price, and actually inspire so many more people to do it. But at the moment, it just seems like...
So you know what, Andy, I just really appreciate you taking the time to take us through some ideas of how software and technology has really evolved in the creative process. I think if I were to try to close this space, I would say, as Andy Moor the DJ, Andy Moor the producer, if there's some young kid out there that wants to become he wants to get started and jump in and create your sound, what would be your advice to this kid to get started?
I think it would be sustain the passion throughout all aspects of learning. Don't take the easy option always if it doesn't give you the outcome which you can achieve one day. Also, don't think something is finished when you've got something more to learn before. If you think something's finished when deep down that there's something else you can learn that will bring what you really want to the table, just chase that first. The track isn't finished until it's all of you is within it.
I love that. That's great. Great advice. Love that. Well, Andy, man, thanks for taking the time to spend with us. We appreciate it. Is there anything else that we should be looking for from you? Is there a new record coming? Is there a new project we should be looking for? How do they find out and get more Andy Moor music? How do they find you?
They can find me on social media, Spotify. The record label is Ava Recordings, which is my label, which we have our 350th release coming out soon, which will be my track with Somna. And then I've actually got a lot of tracks which just aren't finished yet. I'm keeping them all back ready for the end of lockdown. So keep your eyes peeled. Well, I'm sure you've got plenty of more important things going on right now, Corona. But yeah, I'll have more music out soon.
And are you planning to figure out a way? And I've been asking this question of all my artists out there: how to keep connected to your fans? Because without your tours and without the thousands of fans in the stands, how are you keeping connected? Are you reaching out via Instagram? I mean, what are you doing now?
Yeah, just doing the usual socials. I did do Twitch during the last lockdown, and now we're coming back into a new one, at least here in the UK. So I'll be doing more Twitch streams. I'm actually about to start recording some educational tutorials, just to try to give something back, and creating the music. And also I want to start streaming the creative process as well. So
that would be awesome.
Yeah. So and then just the production. Keep producing.
And now that we've had this great conversation with Andy Moor, we promised you a small concert, maybe a little video of some of his best work. Well, Andy's been able to give us a small clip, almost 30 minutes of a great concert that we can air right here at IMSTA FESTA 2020. So strap yourself in the seats, or better yet, get up and let's throw our hands up and let's rock out to a nice mini concert from Andy Moor. You guys ready? Let's do it. Bye.